everybody. Welcome to Sandbox Cooperative. The mission of Sandbox is to provide a forum for conversation around faith and life issues by bringing in some engaging and amazing speakers from all over the U.S. so far, which is really exciting. Tonight we have Becca Stevens with us, and she comes from Nashville, Tennessee. And looking ahead in April, we'll have on April 19th, author and blogger Jake Boma. And later on September 27th, we'll have Science Mike McHarg from the podcast The Liturgists. I think there is, for the people here in-house tonight, an email sign-up sheet, so be sure if you want to receive our newsletter to get your name on that. And then if you're watching from home, if you go to the sandboxcooperative.com website, you can sign up on the main page for those announcements. So yeah, make sure to keep those in mind and watch for the people coming up. We love donations to support this work. It's what keeps this running. So if you're interested in supporting this mission financially, there's a donate tab on that homepage of the website. Check that out. And a quick word about the format tonight. If you haven't been a part of this before, we'll have Becca Stevens speak first, and then and then we'll move on to a Q&A session, and we'll take questions from the online audience and the people here in the room. So for more information about that, I'm going to pass you over to Chris and Aaron, and they'll talk about that.
All right, so just a couple quick things for those of you viewing online. There's a couple different ways that you can ask questions and join the conversation. So the first is on the Sandbox Cooperative Facebook and Twitter pages, especially using the hashtag #SandboxCoop. Otherwise, if you're watching on live stream, you can use the on-screen chat box that's included there. We got us kind of following that and looking for questions. Just ask your questions, submit them, type them in any of those places, and we'll do our best to get to them as soon as we can. Also, if you're viewing online, we'd love to know where you're watching from, so just let us know on any of those places, Facebook, Twitter, or the live stream chat. Let us know where you're watching from and who you're watching with. Feel free to engage each other and keep the conversation going online. You don't have to just answer the questions or talk about the questions that are being asked in the room. Feel free to engage that conversation together as well. And here is Dave to introduce Becca.
First of all, welcome. Good to have everybody here, and special welcome to those who are watching online. Tonight is about starting a conversation here in this place, and we hope that it's a conversation that kind of reverberates through our online community as well. As Chris just said, talk and keep that conversation going throughout the night online through Facebook and on our dialogue box, and we look forward to seeing kind of where those talks go. But for now, we're really excited to welcome Becca Stevens. Becca is one of the premier preachers, speakers, and presenters around the United States. She frequently says that love is the most powerful force for social change. Becca is an Episcopal priest and the founder of Magdalene. It's a residential communities of women who have survived prostitution, trafficking, and addiction. She founded Thistle Farms in 2001 and currently employs nearly 50 residents and graduates, and houses a natural body care line of paper and the sewing studio and the Thistle Stop Cafe. Products from Thistle Farms are available for sale right over there in our studio and online, so buy them. Valentine's Day is coming. Time is running out. We're here to help. This is a service for you, the public. And also, she's written several books, so buy those books too, and read them and share them with friends. Just an incredible resource at our disposal. Becca demonstrates that love is good business. She raises millions of dollars every year to support the organizations that she runs. She has been featured in the New York Times, ABC World News, NPR, PBS, CNN, Huffington Post. The White House named her as one of the 15 champions for change for violence against women in 2011. I'm so excited and honored to welcome Becca into the Sandbox. Welcome, Becca Stevens.
I came so close to wearing shoes, I promise. I just took my shoes off. I haven't spoken with shoes on in about 25 years, but being in Minnesota has almost completely changed that in 1 minute. but I'm braving it because I think I would fall if I was wearing shoes to talk to you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us. This is a beautiful journey. This is Ty's first time to be in Minnesota, and she is going to be joining us for our Q&A time. But I wanted to give you a little bit background on who we are and talk a little bit about how we're all engaged in this conversation. And I thought we just could call it from compassion to action. And Thistle Farms in Magdalene have been around for about 20 years. We started with one house, 5 women, just inviting women to come and live and find sanctuary. All the women were basically maybe 10 years on the street on average when we first started. Since we have been a part of this journey with women over the last 20 years, on average, the women that we serve are first rate between the ages of 7 and 11. And just like you were talking about earlier, that women hit the streets that we serve on average between the ages of 14 to 16 years old. So the women were coming, they were doing amazing work. It was a very, very simple model. Come live 2 years for free with no authority in the house. If you have a background of sexual abuse, you know that one of the big triggers in our world is authority. It's why the prison system doesn't work. It is why many of these women come in and out, come in and out, come in and out, and on average have about 100 arrests on their record. So the idea was just stop it. Let's don't have a religious organization. Let's not have a government organization. Let's have community. And let's be together and help the women and find the resources we need so that they can heal. So women were coming, doing great work, doing incredible things, but nobody would hire them. You can imagine what their resumes might have looked like if you've been on the street since you were 14 years old and spent that much time in jails and in prison. So that's when in 2001, 14 years ago, we started Thistle Farms. And we started it in February, so this is our month anniversary. And we love that we started it, right at Valentine's Day. It was a perfect time to start making candles. And we wanted to make bath and body care products so that the women would get the idea that their bodies were healing, that there was a sense of being back in the community, and that they could become economically independent. It's crazy to talk about love and loving the women, and that's all we were talking about. Our whole mission statement when we started was we want to be a witness to the truth that in the end, love is the most powerful force for social change that there is. And it's ridiculous to talk about that and not be concerned about people's economic well-being. There was no way the women that we were serving were going to get to go to halfway houses and pay $125 a week to live in those houses without hustling. And there was no way to stay clean without hustling. So we started this journey, and if you're like me, it is overwhelming. And part of the reason is if you just look at like Shared Hope International statistics. Millions of people trafficked every year. In the United States of America, the PBS special that was out last week that we were featured in, A Path Appears, talks about 100,000 women under the age of 18 at risk for trafficking in the United States alone. That we have figured out that we need trauma-based therapy because all of this starts in youth, in childhood sexual abuse. It is daunting and huge issues. So I get to where sometimes, not as much anymore, but for a long time thinking, okay, so we house 28 women at a time. We have 50 women that are part of our community at Thistle Farms. That is not probably a drop in the bucket for the size of the issues that we're talking about, for all of the global implications of it. Furthermore, each issue is huge. Child rape is huge. Homelessness, huge. Felony records, restoration, huge. And so sometimes I think it's hard to engage because the problems are so large and we are too small. And then after that numbing, amazing statistics and all of those things, what you really realize when you start doing this work for years and years is that those huge statistics and those global issues mean very little. That actually the way it works is it's a story. And it is an old and a universal story. but the issues of sexual violence against women are borne on individual women's backs. They're carried in sometimes very secretive and tight communities, and they are never told. I was in Jamaica last week at a USAID conference on trying to start social enterprises for women who are coming off the streets and being trafficked in Jamaica. Shared the stories. Afterwards, the most important feedback, they said, that they heard from us, from the participants, was we had never really been given permission to tell our stories. That we've always been encouraged to keep quiet. That those stories are so hard, and they're hard to tell and hard to hear, that we don't tell them. But that's how those issues are carried. They're carried on individual backs. So when we engage in people, and not necessarily think about global issues, but think about a story, to know what we're listening for, to hear the story, to know how to engage that story, that's what I'm interested in. I think that is what helps us move from compassion to action. So, I wanted you to meet Ty before she came up here. This is a picture taken by a Pulitzer Prize winning photographer that spent a couple weeks with us this summer. Ty hails from a small town in Tennessee. At Thistle Farms, we have women, I think right now, from about 8 different states. Ty came from a very small town, and like most of the women from Magdalene, experienced early childhood trauma in a very dramatic way. And the way she tells her story, and what she'll share more about later, I'm sure, is that she spent her middle school years basically hiding in her closet from her stepfather. And when that didn't even work, she was gone. She was gone from the home. And when other people were thinking about what it meant to go to a prom or what to do, Ty was hustling on the streets to buy clothes, food, and drugs. She ended up in and out of the prison system, and finally she came to Magdalene, to the residential program Magdalene, and to the work at Thistle Farms. And she became a candle maker. Every candle over on that table, Ty made it. She made it personally. So she comes and she starts making candles. She has one outstanding warrant on her. She served probably 3 or 4 years in prison on that last stint. She came to us and there was one outstanding warrant. She spent a year. She was going to the sexual assault center. She was doing the work she needed to do. Magdalene, North Thistle Farms take any federal or state funding. It was free to every citizen of our state. They came and they served her on the warrant. We went back to court. We testified. And I'll never forget that particular DA. And we have a great relationship with many DAs. And legislation is changing on many of these laws to help us realize that people who are trafficked at the age of 12 and 14 and become addicted are not necessarily in any way should be viewed as criminals, that they are not participating in this action. Anyway, this DA, not of that ilk. And when we testified about all this great work she was doing and how they could do it, monitor, they could do whatever, we would work with them. He said he hated to quote scripture to a pastor, but Caesar gets his due. And I wanted to say, well, don't worry, you did not quote scripture to a pastor. You completely missed it, but I thought maybe that wouldn't help Ty. And they came back and sentenced her to 14 more years. And we left the court that day, all of us devastated, about really how hard these issues are and how big they are. And we do not get the luxury of sitting on the sidelines. That we have to be together and keep fighting these systems that continue to do harm and trauma to women. Ty went back in and she sat in prison for another 3 years. She left us. And when Ty came back out after 3.5 years, about how many months ago? Close to 2 years. She walked in from jail, came back to Thistle Farms, and she started making candles. It's like, Ty, how did you do it? How did you not get so mad and so bitter from so much stuff for so long that you just want to say, forget it? Just forget it. And she said this was the first time she ever went to jail, that she ever went to prison with a community behind her. This was the first time people wrote to her. She knew she had a home when she got out, no matter how long she stayed. People put money on her commissary card. They wrote notes. They did everything. And it makes a huge difference. It saves us from bitterness into a place of hope and joy. And so it is like, welcome. And the truth is we can develop community and be together wherever we are. One of the things that we've really started doing is reaching back out into the prison system. As you know, the United States of America has highest per capita number of people in prison of anybody in the world. 7.5 million people if you count people on probation. Many of those folks, especially the women that we have been working with, report, something like 85% of the women in the national study they did report violence before the age of 7, 8 years old. For many, many people, it is the gate opening towards prison very, very early on. And so to go back in and create community, to create trauma-based therapy, and to be able to start managing long-term programs for women is a very, very important part of what we're doing. So I want to talk for just a second about this idea that we are a global community dealing with global issues in very local ways. So what happened for us is, as small as we were and as tenuous as our business structure is when you have a minister running a business, we were doing really well. In about 2008, we really started getting calls from folks all over saying, we have women that need help. We need help starting a social enterprise. How do you start this model? And I don't mean calls just like from Minnesota, Washington State, New York, Florida. I mean Kenya, Ghana, Ecuador, Bosnia, all over. That while we were maybe not getting the word out as well as we could marketing-wise about how to sell product, the word had gotten out that more than 80% of the women coming through our program are graduating 2 years later. That women do recover, that you can't kill hope, and that women in community can preach healing to a village. That you can kill a village by raping the women, and you can also heal a whole village by healing the women. One of the places we got involved with was Rwanda. In 2008, we started a partnership. These are all women who are survivors of the genocide in '94. Well, except for my family right in the middle. Those are my 3 sons and my sweet, sweet husband, Marcus Hammond. And so 2008, we started going over there. All farmers, survivors of the genocide, lost children, victims of pretty horrific violence on their bodies and to their spirits and in their families. And they were farmers. They go back out into the fields where they had dug up the bones of the people that they were trying to find and bury, and went and planted lavender, eucalyptus, patchouli, lemongrass, and geranium. And we fell in love with geranium. Geranium happens to be an amazing mosquito repellent. It smells beautiful, and the way Nicholas, who is the director of the program, describes it, the mosquitoes hate it so much they do anything to escape. And when they can't, they fall asleep. That's what a gentle soul that man is. That's how he describes his bug repellent. So we became the North American distributor for geranium. We started marketing it. We made it into products. We've gone back every year. We have expanded it. We just this year helped purchase 8 cows for the women who need it for both compost and fuel to distill the geranium. And we got the cows in November. And Nicholas wrote about 2 weeks ago saying half the cows were pregnant already. And just growing and growing. So when we started engaging and trying to expand the products, we were taking geranium everywhere we went, including into the prison. And one of the prisons we visited was Houston, Texas, in the middle of summer. We got there, brought all our materials in, passed them out, only to discover the room that we were in. There was no air conditioning. This is August in Houston. The women all work in turnip fields with guards on horseback, so you can imagine the combination of all coming in a room together and smelling the sweat and the turnips and the horse manure. Passed out the materials, and the woman sitting right on the front row just takes one of the pieces of paper and just lays it over her head. And she said, "This smells so good." So what had happened was, in all this excitement around packing geranium and getting it distributed around the country, it had leaked onto the papers. And so this one drop of oil kind of opened my eyes to about how I can personally move from a sense of being overwhelmed to a sense of deep gratitude for any small drop I have in that bucket. That a group of women in Rwanda who had survived genocide had gone back out into the field to plant something healing. And then some of that came across the ocean to another group of women, survivors themselves, who stamped "Love Heals" on every product and blended it. Then it went on an airplane, and then it went through a prison wall so that a drop of it could be ready to be breathed in for a woman who needed to have a bit of hope for healing. Now, if a drop of oil can make that journey through all those obstacles that you could never plan, imagine what a group of people planning with resources and skills can do to a community. For me, I used to think about it like, can you believe it takes a whole community of people to help 5 women get off the ground, to come together and be back in community? Now I think about those first 5 women that came into our community, about how much pioneers they are, to help launch a movement now that has 20 sister communities around this country, that has 15 global partners and is still growing. It has just been this idea that global just seems so huge, but if you can look at one picture, it's so sweet and beautifully intimate. The other reason that we need to come together and that we need to be engaged and not sit on the sideline in these huge issues with thinking that our resources are not enough is that all of you are here because you're already engaged. All of you are already here because you do work, that you have tons of compassion, that you're engaged in your community. And if you are involved in social justice work, you know the very truth that is, you get really crappy resources and people want you to do amazing things to inspire them. People give you their old stuff, or people ask you, say, here's $100, do something great. So this is like the buildings you get. This is the building we got. This is right after the flood. It used to be an old hairdressing place. What do you call them? Salon. Hair salon, thank you. Hairdressing place is what we call them in Nashville. There was a flood. The floor just wiped out. You can see the lights are just horrific. And because so many people were coming, there's more than 1,000 individuals that come to learn about the model now annually for us. And we're trying to train and share everything we have. I believe with my whole heart that social justice work is a non-competitive sport, that we need to cooperate and be together because the resources are small and we're asked to do such big things that we need each other. We need all our gifts and we need to share them. And remember, it's no one person's vision, it's no one person's doing, it's always a community. And that is what happens when you have little resources that you can transform places like that. And this is what we did this past year, is turn it into a beautiful cafe. And now we can welcome people and remind folks that it is lavish, it is beautiful, we can be together and doing this work, not so that it is oppressive, but that it's uplifting. So the way we did it was we centered the whole thing around story. A story in every cup, and those are all cups by survivors and people who celebrate survivors. Every one of those chandeliers, there's 5 of them. And we probably got from about maybe 8 or 10 different countries, thousands of teacups holding a story. Once the word got out and, people's granddaughters, they've been hanging on to their grandmother's teacups, or great Aunt Sassy's teacups from Minnesota. They were sending them with these amazing stories of how long this has been going on. How long not only have we caused so much harm in this world, but how long we have held up survivors. And how strong women are, and beautiful and powerful too. That the abuse and the brokenness we know is not the end of the story. That it actually can be roots for a powerful voice, and that we're all called to share our truth even when our voice shakes, and to share that story. So this shows the cafe on what it looks like on an education day. And usually there's about 15, 20 different states represented, both in January and this month, next week. There's a few more than that. And people network, and they come together, and we think cup by cup, drip by drip, day by day, we are definitely growing, being a part of a growing movement. All of us. That it's not just this huge thing that happens and then it's over. It is small building blocks that come together. And I look at pictures like that, and I think of every one of those folks sharing the story, their truth, their story with other people, and it building out from there. This group coming together, thinking again about what it is that our gifts and resources are that are going to be about helping heal this village. The other thing that is so inspiring for us and for you and for all of us in this work is that love is actually good business. That it is not counter to business ideas. That what we're growing is not unsustainable. That is very good news, because I think sometimes when you're doing the work, Pastor, you feel like, oh my God, I have turned into a professional beggar. I beg to the rich on behalf of the poor. I can do that this year, I can do that next year, but at some point people, I'm always worried, won't pick up the phone when I call. Like, but the idea of growing a movement and having partners with their social enterprises where women are coming together to build businesses has been the most encouraging thing. People want to hope with you. People want to hear a story that is about hope and join in. We are not alone in this. It is not that small. We are a company that is growing now right at 25 to 30% a year on average. We just took on 7, but then one more came this week. 8 new employees this week. That is big. Not very many bath and body care companies in January hire. It is a great gift, and we probably have about 100 more women on the waiting list that will come tomorrow. So we just keep going, we keep working, we keep praying, we keep loving, and we find out that we can make these beautiful, lavish products, and we can begin to compete in the marketplace. One of the things that I want to say tonight, and I hope the conversation continues, is that we really need to be creative and engaging in these continued conversations. We still need tons of ideas and tons of help. You still need tons of ideas and tons of help. We all do. That we can engage each other and think of new ways to share this story. One of the things that happened for us at Thistle Farms is we had these beautiful products. We labeled them all with biblical names. I was really responsible for that. I had a lot of creativity. I named things like the bath salts, Lot's wife. I had Moses lip balm, no more desert lips, the flame of Penuel, the balm of Gilead. I had them all named. And I thought it was like just so beautiful and creative. And this group came through and they were like, those are horrible, horrible names. That you're asking people way too much. What it's really about is the women of Thistle Farms. Take the names off. You'll notice now it's called Candle, Body Lotion, and what it says is Love Heals. It's about the women and Love Heals. And we needed a team of people who could understand how to get that message across and how to be creative. And at that point, Whole Foods started picking up all our products. And now, at least in 2 or 3 regions, we are the sole suppliers of bath salts for Whole Foods. That never, ever would have happened the way we did it several years ago. And the more you do that, the better your margins are and the more money that you can actually make as a social enterprise. So it's good news. You know what I mean? It's like it seems hard, and then all of a sudden it seems like this is fun. There are moments when it's really great to be together and think of creative ways to heal. And that's true for everybody. I mean, I think 8 out of the 10 departments now are run by graduates of the program. When everybody comes in, Ty is the one that trains them how to make candles. I have no idea how to do it. The entire sales staff came off the streets of Nashville, Tennessee, and they are the entire national sales staff for the company. They are part of this creative marketing, part of this idea that we want to be creative and engage together in all kinds of ways. This is the logo of the new cooperative for all the groups coming together under shared trade, where women who are producers are getting a better percentage of the market. In other words, instead of a 50-50 split, it's a 60-40 split, and distribution is included in it. So women in Rwanda, Uganda, Ghana, Ecuador, India, and all the places we have partnerships are committing that extra 10% that producers usually don't get directly back to the women. So there's a million stories to share, and we're going to have some great time for questions and answer. And I just want to leave you with one more story. The woman who packed this party tonight and who is the coordinator of all our events, her name is Doris. And Doris, like most of the women who come to us, had, just so much heartbreaking stuff in her youth that you wonder how anybody survives sometimes. And what does that mean? Can you make that not happen? Huh? Oh. Well, don't worry about that. Just look at Doris's face. I don't know how to do that. Did y'all see her? We can just turn it off. Anyway, so Doris, she had tons of issues, and it is amazing to think that she survived. She left her home. And the way that she tells her story is that she actually walked a 10-block radius for 26 years. Now just get that in your head for 1 second. Imagine walking a 10-block radius for 26 years. And there may not have been one wall, but so much that kept her there, whether it is shame, whether it is addiction, whether it is fear, whatever the issues are, she was stuck. But community did not give up on her. And it was in one outreach that she met some women who invited her to come, and she came into the residential program and came to Thistle Farms. One of the first things that she taught me is you cannot kill a spirit. She came and immediately she started writing songs about what she was going through. This beautiful voice, and she started packing, and she would wear beautiful clothes while she was packing and sing and full of joy and wonder. And one of the songs that she wrote, the lyrics contain all 23 products we make. Those are the kind of songs that she's writing. I mean, they're like intense songs. And it rhymed. Can you imagine how much time it takes to get 23 products in a lyric to rhyme? So she used to go, all the women go on trips. She went on a trip with me to Florida. We were in Jacksonville, Florida 2 weeks ago, and a woman who had never been to the beach went, and she walked out onto the sand. Anika from Detroit, actually, she went out onto the sand, and she looked at the ocean, and she was amazed, and then she did this act that I think every person in the world does, is she bent over and she started picking up seashells. Do you know that first time you see those? Doris and I landed at the beach, and Doris, for the first time that I'd ever seen her, got really scared, and she would not go down. It was at night. She was like, "No, I'm not going, and I'm like, "Doris, the sharks rarely crawl up onto the beach and just bite your ankles. Nothing is going to happen. I'm going to be right there." And she's like, "No, no, no." So she swore that the first thing in the morning she would go, and at sunrise we were out there before the event was happening that we were in Florida for. And I got to be with her. So many of the women that we have all served in the work that we do have seen the inside of prison walls and the underside of bridges and the short side of justice and the back side of anger. And so many of the women I serve have never seen a sunrise from a shore or the top side of a cloud. And it is a joy to get to watch that. When Doris's feet hit the sand in her joyful way, she just said, God did a good job. But when her feet hit the tide, she just leaned her arms back and stretched her head up and said, has this been doing this my whole life? The whole 26 years she was wandering in a circle, that tide was going in and out. This wondrous and beautiful sight. My Lord, the whole time that the moon has been spinning around the earth, that tide has been going in and out. And I believe with all my heart, with 20 years of this work under my belt, that older and deeper than the tide is love. It is a stronger force that pulls on us. But sometimes it takes a community to help us get to the shore to feel it. We need each other, not desperately, but lavishly to do this work. We need each other to believe in each other. We need each other to make a difference. We need to tell our stories. We don't know who's listening. We need to pool our resources and help more women get to the shore to feel the glorious power of love. Thank you. You may come. Ty, you coming?
Just to recap for those of you who are joining us online, just invite you to, whether it's through Facebook and Twitter with the Sandbox Co-op hashtag, or if you're watching on the live stream, feel free to join in the conversation there, but just ask your questions, let us know what you've got, and we'll go from there.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for your presentation, and welcome Ty to the stage.
Thank you.
It's good having you here. We look forward to, if there are questions, raise your hands. Not Minnesota nice, raise your hand so we can see it. And that's what we're looking for. And we want this to be a conversation both in-house and online. And we've got about 35 minutes for this conversation. So I just, I'm so inspired by the words that you shared, but the image that's sticking with me right now are those teacups. And every teacup that is a story. And so I'm wondering more about your stories. And Ty, you haven't been able to share anything directly yet, but what are your stories? Stories of hope, stories of joy, but what is, for both of you, what, if you could share one more story, what would it be?
Becca shared a lot of my story. But I like the opportunity of being able to travel. I like telling my story to help another woman coming off the streets. I love selling the products. I love making the products. And I've accomplished a lot of things since I've been at Thistle Farms and graduated from Magdalene. I do the graduation ceremony in May. It's once a year. And
That's this coming May?
Yes, this coming May. Yes. And just going out and being able to travel the country and tell my story.
And you make the candles?
Yes, I make the candles.
Tell me about that. What is it like?
It's soothing, especially making a lavender candle. The inspiration is my favorite. But I pray when I'm making the candles. I make my candles with a whole lot of love. And I meditate. Yes.
Okay.
And the candles hold a very special place for us. We light a candle every day before we start work for the whole community, and we sit together and we say, we light the candle for the woman who is still on the street, and we light the candle for the baby born into this without a choice, and we light a candle, for the next person that is going to walk into this building. And the idea is that, a single candle can cut through a dark night. And that the next candle might really help somebody come off the streets. So the candles were our first products. They're our best products. And so to be the candle maker is a place of honor.
And we also light the candles during group, right before each group.
Okay.
And and we say, we like this candle for what Becca said, but I think I stirred the candles. I used to stare at the candle and think about the women that's still out there suffering, but it also gave me encouragement to share my story more and to open up in group.
So that candle is really an inspiration to continue.
It is.
Continue on.
Yes.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges that you two have faced in the last few years? I mean, what is part of your story that you would share as challenges, obstacles that you faced? I mean, we've heard about unbelievable story about having to go back to prison and all of that.
Yes, that was a challenge. During the whole time I came for a year, as Becca said, and I did the best, and I went to all my groups. I participated. I worked at Thistle Farms. But I used to be a runner, and I've never sat still anywhere. But they showed me so much love that first year, and so many people supported me. And I thought about running a whole bunch of times, but I just couldn't. Everything, it was like I started to live for the very first time in life. And I just didn't want to run away from that. I didn't. I mean, I've never been loved like that before, because from the community that I come from, it's prostitutes, shoplifters, dope dealers, gamblers, and it's just a way of life. It's just how it is, and you grow up and you think that it's all right to be that way because you don't see or know anything different, but to be introduced to something totally different and good people in life, I just couldn't run from it.
And you got to be part of, you were given a new vision.
Yes.
A new vision. Oh, we have a question over here.
Some of the women becoming the program have children already, and how is that?
Yes.
So the question for online, if you raise your hand, we'll get you a mic. But the question again is, when women come in and they have children, how is that handled?
So one of the big inspirations for the women is to gain custody of their children back. Not all the women have children, but many of the women do have children. And some of the women have had children after their graduation. They get their house and they birth, and that's a big joy for the community. For the women who have, and if you have children, you have lost custody of children when you come to Magdalene. If you're on the streets and in prison, you have lost custody. It may not even be formal losing custody. One of the things that you work on might be court restitution costs to pay back child support, parenting classes, and you begin to have visitation. But for the first year, really, women are working on themselves, and they're working on getting a great foundation and to try to make restitution with their family and children. And then visitation comes way before custody. And when women take full custody of their children, we have a woman that's getting full custody of her children actually this month. And at that point, they move out. So kids do not live at the house. They can definitely do visitation there, and we have many, many, many family and children's activities to be a part of that journey back, but that is, children do not live at the house.
Chris, is there an online question?
Yeah. So the first one that I think that came in here is with, you kind of talked about it being a systemic issue in some ways. There are some things that kind of happen before, and people are kind of, in some ways, end up in these situations regardless of what they've even done. It just kind of is in some ways a product of their surroundings. And so So what kinds of things can we do that can prevent or kind of help with some of those systemic things before we even get that far down the road? What can we do to make our communities better now that would impact down the road?
Right, well, that is what we're doing. That is exactly what we're doing now. I mean, the idea of intervening at any point helps from the future on. So again, women are not coming into the program in isolation. They are bringing generations before and after them, and cousins and friends and communities along with it. If you can think of things that are systemic as being more viral than systemic, it's like, when you just hear what Ty said, is that everybody she knew was a, what'd you say, drug dealer,
Prostitute,
shoplifter.
a shoplifter.
But I mean, that kind of stuff spreads, and how that spreads, and having an intervention that then changes that story, changes it for generations after that too. So in other words, a specific example I'm thinking of is Shauna, who's one of the heads of the sales team, who was sold by her mom to her mom's drug dealer at the age of 12, and then went on to be trafficked all over the U.S. for several years. When her pimp was put into federal prison and she came to Magdalene, one of the very first goals she had was about intervening on behalf of her children and her, children, her friends' children, and stopping it at that point. And she's helped many women young women, get into, what's it called that Sheila works at? In Slavery of Tennessee, which does the foster care for youth. But in addition to that, her own daughter has been able to move back in with her. Her own, her daughter is doing all the work at Race Act Center, the Rape and Sexual Abuse Center, starting to go to college. One of the women that's the head of the sales team for Thistle Farms, when her daughter just graduated now from college, she's been in the program 14 years. Her daughter just graduated from college, and she hired her to help rep the Whole Food Stores account because it's so big. It does change. I mean, wherever it is you intervene on that, at 12, at 20, at 60, you go back and you're doing the healing work to help it not keep moving on. So anywhere you stop the dam at that point, you build the dam, it will back up. So it's not like it's lost if you wait till somebody's 20. For me, I think of it as it took a long time for me to understand my own history, my abuse, and to confront my abuser. It took me a long, long time. At that point, when you go back and you see how dysfunctional the whole community was, you can begin to start doing work all the way around it. So it's not just the next person's going to happen, it's going to stop. It will stop. You can break up a community system or a sick, dysfunctional family system enough where it won't keep going.
Yeah. We have another question.
Getting involved, especially at the level that you have, can really consume your life. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you either balance your personal life. I see that your husband and children went with you to Rwanda. How do they get involved? And I'm just interested in hearing a little bit about how this work has formed your own personal life.
I would say that I gave up the word balance a long, long time ago. That the idea of balance felt like, you had to keep everything going, like spinning the plate thing, and surrender felt much easier, just like you do whatever's in front of you. And so I've taken on a kind of farmer's philosophy of you go out and you water and weed that day, and then you go out the next day and you water and weed, and you go out that next day. It might not always be the same crop. It might not always be, the same season and what the needs are, but there's always work to do. And there's animals to be fed, and, all of that always it continues. And parenting and feeding animals and children is very, very similar. And in my mind, it is that all of our days are busy. All of us have busy days. It's not like if I didn't do this, I wouldn't be busy. I could be busy. We can all be busy. And it's really choosing what you want to be busy with. And what makes me weepy about this work is not being overwhelmed. It is not the horrific nature or the huge nature of it. what makes me weepy is how grateful I am for it. That I have seen so much transformation in people's lives, and I've seen so much joy, and I get to meet new people and make new friends, and I think, I'm so grateful at the kindness of people and to be inspired by so many folks who just welcome you in and just don't hesitate to say, what else can we do? What else can we do? And it's like, I will be grateful forever for this work. And I'm grateful that my family, you know, is a part of it sometimes, but I have no balance. Awful, isn't it?
No, it's true.
No, yeah.
We I had the opportunity to read your book, Snake Oil, and you do talk a little bit about the women that come in and kind of fighting the issues of addiction, and how does that impact your work, and what does that look like?
How does addiction impact our work?
Well, in the program, we have to make 5 meetings a week, NA meetings. We have people come in from the outside that get down to the core issue, the root of everything. We have therapists, we have life coaches, and I make meetings. I have a sponsor. I have almost 5 years clean now. That's basically it.
She gets very nervous, by the way. She's like,
So.
And I saw you two talking with each other earlier, so that the rapport that you have.
Yes.
So just. Yeah.
Okay.
I would just say this. I would say that there's very few companies that you can go into where the biggest threat to the company is relapse, whether it's relationship or drugs. And for many of the women, they'll relapse over a relationship before they'll relapse over a drug. And it's very important for everybody to maintain daily contact, to maintain daily healthy behavior so that we don't fall into that, any of us. And I think there's an awareness at the company that makes it safe. There's an accountability in the community to each other when we see somebody looks like they're in danger, and we really try to hold each other accountable. And I think the idea of people being in recovery allows you to do that more, if that makes any sense, because it's not uncomfortable. It's the language that you're used to.
It feels good it's good to have the support at Thistle Farms, because most of the women are in recovery, and I always have a sister to talk to, and they always, you know, they also have me. We have each other. We share rides with each other, going back and forth to meetings.
But like, how old were you when you first started using?
12.
And I would say that's true for most of the women. And so the idea of being an adult in adult relationships with other folks who are, for the first time sometimes, experiencing anything with a sober mind since you're 12 years old, I mean, that's pretty intense, and you need a community to do that with.
Yes.
And to say, is this normal? Is this how you're supposed to feel? Is this what Christmas is? Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, you know, a lot of people don't know how to celebrate a holiday.
They don't have those traditions. You're presenting time after time, again, like a new vision for
Right.
what life looks like.
Right.
Yeah.
What else y'all got?
I think just maybe there's just a couple logistical questions and just kind of about the program itself. So if I could maybe just fire a couple quick to you and see what you wanna answer. The first one is how many women graduate through the program in a typical year? Is there enough space in the program to accept all the women interested, or do you have to turn some away?
Oh, this person was not listening.
And,
go ahead and say their name.
You can look on Facebook if you really want to know.
Okay.
And just how did you get involved in starting the very first house, and what did that look like?
I would say that on average, somewhere between maybe 10 and 12 women go through the graduation. Sometimes it's a little bit more, sometimes it's a little less. That's what I guess the average is. Let's say 12 women a year graduate. Our program holds about 28 women and several women. So that's a 2-year program, so every other year is about half of that. And the other question is we have about 100 women currently on the waiting list who cannot get in. And that does not count all the people who don't make the waiting list, meaning they're writing us from a women's prison in Minnesota or Arkansas or Texas, and we are just trying to find referrals that are a little bit closer. But we definitely, we try to balance between having women come out of jail, come off the streets, and, honestly, we could open that list up. It would be double that if we let it in a couple weeks. There's no way that you could contain how many people. I mean, just in Ty's family, there's probably 3 women within that whole system of her one family that qualify deeply for Magdalene and are trying to get in and be a part of it. We've had generations of women come in, and sisters and cousins, because once one person finds out that there is a way to get through some of this and not pass on this, generational both sickness and impose it on their children and try to intervene in a whole family, it becomes overwhelming how many people there are.
Yeah, like Becca said, in my family, my mom's in active addiction, and I have a sister that's in active addiction, and I have a niece that is, well, she's in recovery right now. She has about 45 days clean, and I'm going to Knoxville the 15th of this month, the week of the 15th, to file for custody for her. I just moved in yesterday into a 3-bedroom house, and I just want to break the cycle some kind of way, and I'm glad that I can be her light. And I don't go home trying to fix my family. I do go visit, but I stay in a safe place, and they meet me in a public place. Just trying to break the cycle. My niece is in custody right now, state's custody. And I also have a brother that's in active addiction. So my family is pretty much in the vicious cycle right now. And I just try to be the light.
So when we started the first house, the idea was just open up one house, that I knew what a sanctuary might look like for women in community, that it would be free 2 years without any authority in the house. But I think really the reason that I wanted to start it was I just had a lot of compassion for the women that we were doing outreach to or going to visit on the streets, and feeling like I don't even really know how to engage them. I mean, I don't understand exactly, are they conning me? How are you going to give them $10? What does that do? All of that. And it was just almost like, instead of looking at it like that, to look at it just like that, and how would I want it done for me if I was coming out of jail or off the streets? What would I want my house to look like? And I would want it to be so safe, and I would want no one to have ever used those sheets. And I would want to have a new pillow, and I would want to have bath and body care products. Obviously, I love them. And, I think it comes from, my dad was killed when I was really little by a drunk driver. And my mom had 5 kids, and we were thrown into poverty pretty quickly. And then the abuse from the head of the church started shortly after that, which is how a lot of this stuff happens, is you find a pretty vulnerable kid, and then you go after that one. And I don't think I understand what most of the women from Magdalene have gone through at all, but I think I get like how it can mess you up a lot in a lot of different ways. And so even after I went to divinity school and was ordained and all of that, that I thought in some ways I probably had more in common with some of the women I was meeting on the streets than my fellow pastors, maybe. And so it made sense to kind of go with my intuition and open a place that felt like this is what I would want.
You have a sense of home.
Mm-hmm.
What do you've been at it now for some 20 years,
mm-hmm.
and What do you wish you knew then that you know now?
That the bigger you allow yourself to dream, the better it will go. That you don't have to limit yourself so much. That if you can imagine it, like you can imagine, I can imagine raising $100,000 and building a home and having, 5 women come in and having volunteers, then that will probably happen. And then I can imagine building this structure and this place that's, holds a lot of people and can be together and do this, and then that can happen. And then you can imagine this and it can happen. And it was like, every time it's like you're almost scared to imagine it.
Yeah.
And then I wish I could have trusted that more 20 years ago. That's what I really wish. 'Cause everything else is like, whatever. I mean, I personally am always going to worry about some of the same stuff. I know you probably are too. August is a tough month when you're making payroll.
Yeah.
Whatever
Yeah.
your business is. It's awful.
But maybe for church especially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's like I would like to get rid of August.
Yeah. Well, can we look into that? Yeah.
That is so sweet.
Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
that's what we can do. That's what we do. Yeah. When I was reading in your book about, you bought that $1 million building. $1 million building, and just it seemed like it was such a stretch for you. And it seems silly to say, have you ever felt over your head or overwhelmed by it? It probably pales, buying $1 million building probably pales in comparison to the responsibility to the women that you work with. But do you feel over your head? How do you handle that?
It's not on me. I really do mean that when I say communal vision, community cooperation, community action, that I don't feel that, and I don't take that on at all. I don't even have any money. Somebody else is going to have to worry about that. But I guess what I really want to say is this, is that if, it's not just form follows function, money follows mission, and, economics follow lavishness. So the reason we use the best stuff in the best products and sell them is that it sells well. And you do this lavish thing and don't try to cut corners, and do it with your best intentions, and it goes much better. You build $1 million house for 8 women, and you find out 6 years down the road, once we raise the $1 million, we do it for half of what it costs to incarcerate a woman in Tennessee per day. In other words, it costs us literally right at $40 to $44 a day to house a woman at Magdalene Thistle Farms. And it's upward if you look at all the courts and all the arrest records for the state of Tennessee. It's about $85 a day. So you can do this beautiful, great thing. It can be economical, and you cannot feel over your head. It's like, this is a really good deal. By Thistle Farms being where we are in our state, we can show on a graph that we save the city almost close to $250,000 a year just by our presence. So big deal if you raise $1 million. All people should do is write a check with the word thank you on it. I've never taken a salary for that work. I have never, ever, ever. And I wouldn't. I don't mind taking honorariums for speaking. I don't mind taking work as a chaplain. But it's like, I want to go out and I want to raise this money and not be confused about why I'm doing it. I'm grateful. I am so grateful. I had so many times it could have gone another way in my life. And I had some mercy by a lot of kind people. And so I'm grateful to be able to give back. And I try never to forget that. And I hope that's how everybody else feels too, because I think gratitude is one of the greatest gifts that we can feel. And to be able to have places and ways to give that, to not forget, like, guess what? It's gone pretty well for most of us. And it didn't always have to be that way. So I try not to be overwhelmed. I try to be grateful.
Gratitude is way of life. Any other questions in-house? Yes.
Is there a science or a reason behind the 2 years for the program? Oh.
Is there a science or a reason behind the 2 years of the program before graduation?
I don't know if it's a science. Yes. No, but what it felt like to me is you could become an associate degree nurse in 2 years. And that what the reason is it takes that long to develop this whole new skill set of healing. So it made sense to translate that around healing to me. That the first year would really be around addiction and recovery and trauma. I mean, I do not believe people in jail suffer PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. I think they are still in traumatic stress disorder. That you don't get to be post-traumatic stress disorder till you're out of that situation. You know, not that you're not going through the trauma still. Anyway, so that the first year you can deal with all that, and then the second year would really be about building your way out. I had done some transitional housing for folks before, and I found it very troubling because as soon as people were moving in, you're trying to figure out what the next step is, how to get a job, how to save some money, and how to get out. And you were never settled enough to go, I need to talk about what happened when I was little. I need to think about what it is that, why is it that I go after that guy? How do I have 4 months clean, my tire blows on my car, and I go out and I shoot heroin? How did that happen? I mean, you know, and what is that triggering from? So there was enough time to do that, and then also say, you know, I had a parking or let's say a driving ticket, and I never paid it, and now I owe $3,000 to reinstate my license. I'm going to need some time at work to be able to save that money, and we do a match savings program specifically for stuff like that, so that you can eventually get your license back, and you can get legal, and you can get places. And it takes a while, and you need a couple years. And women do not pay anything to live in the Magdalene communities or the Thistle Farms communities for those 2 years. And the idea is that you'll be, you know, debt-free, that you'll be on your way, you'll be able to, you know, go to courts and hold your head up and talk about what are the next steps and rent places and get cars.
Yes. I just got my license a month ago. I'm 49 years old, the first time in my life ever have a license. And I'm buying my car.
Did you have to pay money?
Yes, I did, because I was from Knox County. So, yes, I did have to pay money. But because I didn't have to pay as much as I would have had to, but because I was in the program and they wrote letters, the judge took in consideration and knocked a whole lot of my fines off.
So what did you pay?
So I paid.
Is that too personal?
No, it's $1,500.
$1,500.
Yes, but he knocked probably about $1,000 off. Yes, and I'm buying my car March the 4th.
What are you buying?
I don't know exactly. See, it's also another gift that they have. They work with a car dealership, and people trade in their cars, nice cars. And what they do is they fix them and refurbish them. And we save our money. I saved my money. I saved up $1,200, and the IDA matched my money with $1,000. And we take the $2,200 and give it to the car dealership for a very nice, dependable car that lasts. And a lot of my sisters have those cars, and they don't have any car trouble or anything, just little minor things. So I have a car that I won't have a car note. It'll be mine, all mine, and nobody can take it back like the different people have.
Is there there's one over here. Yes.
So do you find women have been able to leave the program and have jobs outside of Thistle Farms, or do most of them stay?
It depends. She's at, you know, just do people stay at Thistle Farms? Do they go on? And it really, the part of the reason we like working in very small communities is that the programs are very, very individualized. So some people go back to school, especially a lot of the women who are pretty young who come into Magdalene. They use it as a great place while they're in school to, you know, further their education. We've had people go back and be guards in the jail. We've had people go work for the Federal Public Defender's Office. We have women who go to other restaurants. They don't stay at the cafe. All kinds of work. I mean, you know, not the bath and body care industry is not for everyone. Go figure, huh?
It's for me, though. I love it.
No, but yes. So, I mean, and some people don't ever come to Thistle Farms. It's an invitation, not a requirement. The reason we started is that no one was getting work, period. So that's the only reason we started.
Maybe time for one more question online.
So I think the thing that is true for me is that I have pretty little knowledge about a lot of these different issues that these women are facing, and it seems like a pretty daunting topic to me. And it's like I would love to just find small things that I can do on a daily basis, and there are big things coming too. Like, I mean, one of the questions that we had come in was, in a couple of years, Minneapolis is set to host the Super Bowl, which is one of the biggest events in the country for these types of problems. And that's going to be real close to home. And there's other stuff just even in this last week that's real close to home. What can I do? What can someone like me do just to try to make these things a little bit better on a daily basis?
That's such a great question. And I want to say a couple things. And I do have a memory of Clemmy Greenlee, who was a graduate of the program, an amazing woman who has the same history, all that stuff. She came through Magdalene Thistle Farms, and they wanted to start a program in New Orleans. And Clemmy remembers going to New Orleans, I think it was for Super Bowl, with a group of young women being trafficked. And never going, obviously the idea was, hey, we can all go to the Super Bowl, and they get everybody in the van to go, and they never made it into the Super Bowl, obviously. That all those places you just go around and you're servicing people and you never are a part of it. And so that's a very interesting example. And so we opened up a house down there. It's called Eden House, and she was the first director down there. And I just really believe, first of all, I want to say I believe in a housing first model. That when we're talking about women coming off the streets, women who have histories of trafficking, especially who are runaways, housing first model is critical. And then the communities can form around that house, and services can be provided. But it's so critical to have a safe space that is where people don't want to run. Yeah. And that's hard to get to. And I would, I love that there are houses here that have already opened, and the more support and figuring out what does it look like to be supportive of that community. What's the name of it? Mission 21, to be supportive of Mission 21 is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I know that, I think there was an arrest this week from someone who was downloading child pornography and, sorry, what? Several people. 7 people. And the idea of that community being busted open, to me, I hate to say this, but it's good news. Because more and more, at least I hear, as more people report child sexual abuse, child pornography, sexual assaults on campus, it's because people are beginning to believe that more important than that silence or fear of not being believed is to speak your truth. That's huge, and people don't do that unless they think that some people are interested in justice and to hearing the actual story too. So first of all, I would say that for all of us, people say silence your cell phones before you talk. I'm like, blow them up when I'm talking. I'm happy for you to blow it up while I'm talking. Tweeting and Facebooking and doing that. And I really think telling your story in your way that is your truth, that helps remind people that you are a safe person, that you want to be engaged, is huge, especially for the men. Thank God there are so many men here tonight. Usually we are talking to women about prostitution, honest to God. Talking to women about trafficking, talking to women about pornography. And to engage men and have that conversation to say men are such an important part of this circle and this advocacy group, and to be about healing women and holding women up and being not okay with a culture that still buys and sells women at any level, whether that's downloading pornography or pictures or buying people off Backpage, but not being okay with that vocally is huge, and especially in different social media circles, but also honestly in churches and from the pulpit. I mean, to speak those words from the pulpit is a powerful thing, and to say this is what we're going to do, as a community to be safe. And there's tons of curriculum, there's tons of way to do that, and to find your words and to find your circle to be able to do that. The other thing, of course, I would say that is not self-serving at all is to buy our Thistle Farms products. In a crazy way, those things preach beautifully. And we have had interns who have come who have read the labels on those products, from different colleges, on a professor's desk, to have those in your business, to have those in your churches, in your bathrooms. That's a big deal. And it begins to kind of shift the way people think. But, social media advocacy, speaking your truth, making your community safe, buying products, all those are just a few. I got a million.
So we're just about out of time, but we're about to leave here, and people are going to turn off their computers and log out and whatever. But if you could but we want this conversation to continue and just keep reverberating in various communities that we'll all go home to. If you could give people one thing to talk about tonight and in the weeks to come, what would it be?
Well, I will say I think that's an important question. I mean, we were just on PBS last week on A Path Appears. It was a PBS special around the first part of the special by Nicholas Kristof, and Cheryl Woodum was specifically about domestically what's happening in trafficking and women, coming back into community. And once again, we were overwhelmed the next day with orders and conversation. And then once again, the next day it was pretty quiet. And I think people are moved by the story, and then people feel the need to move on pretty quickly. And I guess the main thing I would want people to know is that the gift is community. It's not, the hyper nature, the sensitivity of this topic that gets people interested, but then it also scares them away. And that the conversation and community is what makes a difference. And to stay long enough to be engaged in conversation is the most important thing. So stay with it a few days. It is a moving story, but don't move on. Stay with it.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you. Ty and Becca. Thanks for sharing your stories.
You are welcome. And listen, this was far for us to come from home. It is very nice, and when we're grateful that you remembered us and thought of us enough to let us share this time with you.
It's a huge conversation. Yeah. You would just Brene Brown, I heard a quote from her that says, hope is a function of vulnerability. And you were vulnerable with us in sharing your stories today, and but also sharing hope. And so for that, we're very thankful. We just have lots of products and candles to sell. So again, buy them. Go online and buy them and support this work of lavish love and transformation. Also, learn about your local agencies. If you're watching online, wherever you are, there are agencies. There are people who are doing this locally. It's Mission 21, but wherever you are, be a part of that and support these great organizations that are all around us. Looking ahead for what we're doing here, we are going to be back at Sandbox Cooperative on April 19th. We're going to be welcoming author, blogger, speaker Jake Boma, who will be talking about his journey with Hodgkin's lymphoma as a person of faith, what it's like dealing with suffering and questions, doubts, and uncertainty in a time of crisis. Also, check out our website at sandboxcooperative.com. This happens through donations, just individual donations and different grants that we are able to get. So every little bit helps. So hit that donate tab and help support our ministry as well. We have a hat at the door, my grandpa's old hat, If you're here in the studio, you can leave, and like to leave a financial gift, you can do that as well. Sign up for our Sandbox newsletter, our e-newsletter. If you go to the website, it's on the right-hand column, and you can hit the link there. Share the good word about what we're up to. Continue these conversations, and support your local agencies that are looking to end this terrible reality in our society. Thank you so much.